my refuge. Uh, it sometimes continues to be. I also think that what's wonderful about science fiction and sometimes quite important about science fiction is it provides a lens that is distorted enough to allow us a safe distance when taking on real emotional issues and real social and cultural issues. I often say it's like a carnival mirror, which allows us to see aspects of ourselves more clearly and in ways that are more pronounced than we might otherwise. Lost in Space was the first movie that I produced, and it was during a period in Hollywood when if you were a successful screenwriter, you could negotiate a producer credit. And that's what happened. And I had been on set of a lot of movies because Joel Schumacher, with whom I had made 4 movies in a row, had invited me to work the production of the movie, which was uncharacteristic of writers in those days. So I knew more than was typical for a writer of the time in features, and still I knew nothing. We went to London to shoot the movie, Stephen Hopkins and we, a week in, fired the line producer and then decided that we knew what we were doing, and we had no idea what we were doing. The shoot went way long. I have some vague memory of looking down at my call sheet and seeing day 140. It may be apocryphal, but uh, it wasn't that far off. Finally, New Line sent a woman named Carla Fry, who has passed now, as a production executive, and she sat with us on set for the last few months. And I swear to God, if she had not come, we would still be shooting that movie. But it was trial by fire and school by fire. By the end of that, plus post, plus release, I had learned how to produce a movie.
He suggested that we work with Jerry Goldsmith, who I'd just done The Ghost of the Darkness with, and who's a wonderful composer. And so we worked with Jerry on a bunch of stuff using John's original theme, but trying to use it like you do a Bond one. You don't have it all the way through. You try and use it for big special moments, of great excitement. But then we pushed the recording of the score by a month or so, and Jerry couldn't make it. So, because Jerry would do like 15 films a year, and so he recommended Bruce Broughton, who came on quite close to the end of it, and with a huge amount of music to pull off, I think. And but luckily there was an original score again, and we'd done quite a big. I had Ray Lovejoy, who was this editor who worked with Stanley Kubrick. He did 2001 and Doctor Strangelove and stuff. So we'd done quite a big temp score, which was helpful, I hope, to Bruce. But Bruce came in very valiantly, and we recorded at Abbey Road and mostly Abbey Road, I think. And I think when you do a film which has so many visual effects, and all the visual effects need their own sound effects to make you believe what you're watching, it's quite complicated to do a score because not every thing can be really loud. I'm quite a big sound lover. We won an Oscar on Goes the Darkness for sound, and you have to get the sound right, I think, to believe it, to believe what you're watching. And it was hard to believe what you're watching in Lost in Space because as we're blowing up universes and flying through planets, as you do. So that was quite a complicated piece for Bruce to figure out, with all of us to try and figure out where he came in big and where he didn't. And I think sometimes there's a temptation to put big music through films like this all the way through. And I'm always dead against it, but once some people, if the music stops, they get panicky, I think. But we had scary moments of silence and different stuff. But it was I think it was a lot of music, I think, because the film's a couple of hours long, I think, and I think a lot of it has music going through it.
I normally worked with Norman Garwood on and off for about 14 years. I did most of his films except the last two, where I was working anyway. And Norman was good at interviews. I mean, and he had a really good. Probably the best agent in Hollywood was Sandra Marsh, and he was on her books. And he went for the interview with Hopkins, was it? It's Hopkins, yeah. Went for and a couple of producers, and he came back. He went there, and I think it was the Lancaster Hotel. Well, I think he went to the interview, and he came back in the morning. Came back about lunchtime, and I got a phone call late in the afternoon to say, "I've got a film, Keith. It's Lost in Space." And he said, "Do you want to do it with me?" Which I automatically would say. He knew I would anyway, but he was very polite and just always asked. You know, I said, "Yeah, of course, of course, I'll do it with you." You know, he said it's in Shepperton Studios, which is brilliant because I was living at that time in Weybridge, so it was about a 10-minute drive, and that's how I got the film, because basically it was because of Norman, you know, because we got on so well together, you know, we could almost read each other's minds, you know, so yeah, that's how it started, and then, you know, I went to, I did the deal, which you always do, over the phone, and that was it. Well, I didn't see any of the original TV series, but I knew about it. But the rule of thumb between myself and Norman was that we didn't take any reference from any previous films, because if they made a mistake, we would have made a mistake. So we did our own research all the time. We always employed a researcher to just double check that we were on the right track all the time. And I read the script, and we thought, "Oh, this is very interesting," you know. But it's very complicated. Planet's surface was done on one of the, I think, J stage, K or J stage. No, A, B, C, D. A or B stage in Shepperton, which is one of the largest stages. And A, B, C and D stages, they had a door in between them. So we opened the doors up, which gave you twice the space. So we created an area there of undulating rocks and everything, and they wanted strange plants in there of really strange colours, and it looked a bit, to us in the art department, it looked a bit Walt Disney, but that's what Stephen wanted. He wanted a completely different environment, a different colour for the plants, everything else, mauves and pinks and yellows, and they're very strange plants as well. You know, so the set deck had to investigate a lot of strange plants that weren't normally seen. So they got them from, they got quite a few from Japan, who at that time making really, really good silk imitation plants. Because with the heat of the stage, they were if they were real. And if you're shooting over a period of a week, then you'd always have artificial plants. We got most of it from Japan, because at that point China weren't making anything like that as well, but they were silk, and very fine silk plants. So you could actually design a plant, send it over to them, and they would just make it up in no time at all. So a lot of it was made in, they were false, fake plants, but they were made in Japan. And then you sent your colour charts over to them, and they did the whole lot, and it came equated up, you know, whether it was 6 foot tall or 1 foot tall. They, they made them, so we just planted them around. Stephen choreographed the movement of the actors, so we left a little sort of trail for them to walk through. So we did a plan and planted all out where we were going to put the plants, and Stephen looked at it at one meeting and rearranged what he was going to shoot and how he was going to shoot it. So we rearranged the plants differently, and then it was fine. Visual effects normally work not independently, but they have their own agenda with the a director. So we provide the elements for them, and sometimes, like myself, I wouldn't be that involved with it at all, really. So you don't see until the film comes out what the visual effects have actually done. So we just give them space to, like, if it's like a screen or something or a window, you make it as probably, if it's complicated visual effects outside, then they might want some crossbars in it or something like that, just to confuse the issue slightly. Or if it's a very easy one, then they'd probably want a window which is open paned glass, so you can really see through. We only saw the results of it if he went to, not even to rushes, because it was done in the post anyway. So you very rarely saw anything at all. They would have towards the end of the film. They would have, because the sets aren't ready for them, so they could only do what was actually there, like the first set. That's what they would sort of work on. If there were any visual effects in that set or outside the set, we'd probably see them in a special showing. The art department would be invited, and producers and da-di-da-di-da, and what they'd done so far. But they were only curtailed by the speed of how fast we can make the sets upright and for them. But then that was controlled by the schedule anyway. So if the say one of the main visual sets was the last set or near towards the end of the film, you never saw what was happening, because the film would end and they were still doing it in post probably 6 months afterwards. So you never really saw anything. You might have seen the first set if it had visual effects attached to it. But other than that, we weren't really, art department was involved a bit, but not to the extent of real any input. They were a separate entity. But we worked in conjunction with them, so we didn't mess up or block what they were going to do anyway. So, like the screen at the front was, as you saw it there, is fairly open, so they could really get some really good visual effects. The OP, Peter Levy, on that film, and I worked with him on a smaller film after that as well in and around London. I forget what the name of it is, but he was you worked in close association, basically, more probably with the lighting cameraman than you would with the director, though you always knew the director, what he wanted, because you had meetings with him, or Norman had meetings with him, the production designer had meetings with him, like the Norman, and he'd come back and relay what the director wanted, and then you'd go to have a meeting with Peter Levy and say that this is what the director wanted. Is there anything that you need that we can put into the set that will help you? You know, sort of like an open rooftop or something, because normally they lit from the top anyway. So you'd say, yes, if you can make it as open as you can, so I can get my lights down. So you'd have to think of, okay, so it's quite a wide set, so we might have to put column down the centre of the ceiling so we can hide the lights, you know. So there's certain ways that you can do that if you're going to shoot from this way or that way. Or if you're going to shoot sideways, then you keep the camera down off the ceiling. But he would be aware of that anyway. So you try as much as you can to incorporate what you can into the set with the directions of the DOP. And if you do that, you have a good relationship with him, because a lot of designers, not a lot, a few designers just go on their own way, and then when the lighting man comes on and says, "I can't. This is going to be difficult to light because you haven't given me anywhere I can light from. I can't light from the floor all the time because you're going to see it." So, and then if you do go and you start, and also the gaffer is important as well, because you bring him into the conversation as well, because he's the practical guy who's got to put the lights there. So you go to the gaffer as well and say, "Look, this is a set. This is what Peter wants. Is there anything that we can do to, for you to help you that doesn't compromise the design of the set?" And he would say, "Yes, I would." If you're going to are you going to put columns in? You say, "Yes, okay. Can you make them? How wide can you make them? So I can hide it's basic. I can hide a light behind it. So you say, okay. So what are you going to put there? Is it in those days, was it a 5K, a 10K, or whatever it was? It's a 5K. So the size of a 5K would be about that big in diameter. So you think, okay, we'll make the columns that big, so you can hide a light behind it, and then you have a good, relationship with the lighting department, and then if you have a problem, you can go to them and they say, okay, well, we can do this and we can do that, to help you, and then it works both ways and makes life so much easier for each department. In Hopkins, Norman Garwood, the production designer, did also. I think the whole crew liked working with him. The one thing he didn't really get on with was the special effects, because the tilt didn't work, and that was quite important. And they knew about it months beforehand, because that was one of the main factors, that we had to be able to tilt it in either direction. That's normally on a gimbal built underneath it. So you build the stage up, the floor of the spaceship 4 feet, and they should have built it 6 feet actually, and that was a mistake. And they couldn't tilt it. They couldn't get the hydraulics to work properly, and he wasn't enamoured with them at all. So that's, I think, the only department that he wasn't happy with. But you can't. It's hard to fire a whole department and get a new one in, because a lot of special effects would say no. But he was nice to work with. I think the rest of the crew, the film, everything that we were involved in, the special effects we had to get on with, and so it was just one of those things that happens. Mistakes happen. Everybody makes mistakes. So it's just the way you react to it and try and rectify it that counts actually. I think the art department, if I look to myself, I think I got on reasonably with everybody because everybody was nice anyway. Film I thought was already there because of the a TV series of Lost in Space. So people had a conception of that anyway. So we tried our best, but overall I think it was quite acceptable film. I think it's a watchable film, which is that's the most important thing of all. You don't get bored halfway through and think, oh, if it's on a TV or something, switch it off, but you don't. It holds your attention, I think, and that's due down to basically the actors and the director and the direction of it all. Because most people don't see the effect of lighting, they don't notice it at all, they just think it's always been there. So, and the sets, if the set's interesting as well, that's not normally what put bums on seats. It's normally the acting. That's why the actors get all the acclaim, which half the time is right. I think it was a happy film. I would say for the length of time, I think it was about 10 months we worked on it, with prep and construction and shooting. And that was quite a long time for a film, because most films, maximum, would be 6 months. A normal film for 4 months, like a 6-8 week shoot maximum, and 2 months prep. So it was quite a big film at this time, and I think most of the crew were happy to be on it because you had a long run of stable employment. In those days we didn't have Netflix, Amazon, Prime. I could go on and on and on. Well, we didn't have HBO, we didn't have anything at all like that at all. So it was just purely films, and films sometimes affected by obviously the American industry as well. So if they cut back, it affected us. So you could be working on a film for 4 to 6 months, and then you could be out of work for no fault of your own because there just wasn't any work around. You could be out of work for 3 or 4 months.
I'd worked with Stephen Hopkins on The Ghost in the Darkness, which we shot in South Africa. And we got on very well.
Lost in Space came to Twickenham Studios. It was part of as I remember, a co-production deal where they had to do a lot of the work over here in England.
It wasn't an easy film. It was all on location. And we had very poor projection, I seem to remember. And in fact, I refused to go to the projection because I said, if the sound can't be improved upon, I don't want to come and listen to that. Because I know it's all right, but you don't. And some months later, I was filming with Richard Attenborough at Shepperton, and Stephen walked onto the set, and he came over to me and gave me a big hug, and he said, "Oh, did we talk about you when we were mixing? You did a fantastic job," which was lovely to hear. And he said, I'm here to prepare Lost in Space, and I want you to do it," which I agreed.
Ron Bartlett came over. He was the American mixer, and he did it was a very good job on it, very good indeed. And I'd met him before briefly in Los Angeles on another production.
It was a long film, a long interior film, all shot in the studio.
We did quite a lot of balancing, I know that, so we may have had a lot of the American preparatory work.
We had lots of problems on the film because we had a lot of special effects, and some of the special effects would go wrong and be time-consuming to put right. So I think we went well over budget and well over schedule. Camera crew, we had, I had my normal crew.
Julian Pinn, he is a Dolby technician, works for Dolby, and so he would have come just to make sure everything we were doing complies with the Dolby standard of the time. I mean, the theatre we were working in at Twickenham Studios was a Dolby licensed, high quality re-recording room. So, but he would come in and check all the speakers at the right level.
We had Mike Roberts on camera operator, and he was used to actually getting the setups on other films. And I think he was rather taken aback when Stephen decided he wanted to get the setups. So I don't think they were. He did wonderful work, but I don't think it was always his choice of shots.
Chris Jenkins was a legendary sound supervisor and a mixer. So I think Chris came over as well, I have a feeling, because I've met Chris a couple of times. I met him again in Los Angeles when I was over there.
I don't think there was anything major about the film, as I say, other than the fact that the robots were operated remotely, and they did have a tendency to break down. I mean, if we saw a finger on the robot twitch, we knew that the next thing was going to happen. It was going to stop working. So we always knew what was going to happen. But again, I mean, they were very cleverly constructed, and the special effects people had a hell of a job on that film, but made it time-consuming. But I think we all knew that before we started. It was going to be time-consuming, but no one ever knows when there's going to be a problem. You can't know until the occasion. But I worked with Stephen, and we hit it off. We worked well together. He was very trusting. If I said something, he would take note. Yeah, that was Lost in Space.
Dolby was wonderful. If it sounds good in a theatre, in a re-recording theatre, it would be replicated exactly in a cinema if it was a Dolby cinema. The whole premise was that what mixers heard when they're actually balancing the film relates entirely to what the audience will hear in a cinema. It's a long time ago, but it was a huge step forward. Dolby sound was a huge improvement for the audience perception of sound.
The sound effects are always added later, which by necessity. And we lost a certain amount of sound on occasion because we had these radio links and things going on the set. So we lost a little bit of the dialogue, but in principle, we usually made it work.
Stephen Hopkins, the director, came in and sat with us and listened and approved whatever we did or whatever we adjusted. He was very nice, a good guy. I didn't know him well because we didn't do the whole mix from the beginning. As I said, we had Chris Jenkins and Ron Bartlett there from Los Angeles. And the reason, as I remember, they came to Twickenham was to comply with this tax advantage of finishing work in England.
If the director wants to change the performance, he'll post-synchronize. So, of course, by that time I'm on something else and I don't even know what's going on. So until you actually see the film, you don't know what they've done to it.